Hey everybody, this is Cameron. I am joined today by Anna Purrington. She's on Twitter and she also runs a website called televisionlady.com. And but she's a huge David Lynch fan, and Wild at Heart is one of her favorites. And so I've been following her tweets for a long time, and I've been like very amused, and she has a great wit about her. So I reached out and said, hey, would you like to do a Wild at Heart commentary with me? And she said, that sounds kind of fun. So Anna, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your website, and how you discovered David Lynch's Wild at Heart?
Okay, well, I am educated in film. I went to the University of Minnesota. I've been writing about film for a long time. I came across David Lynch probably a little earlier than maybe it was healthy. I was about 15 years old, and a friend of my mom's brought home Wild at Heart, and I gave it my best, but I really couldn't get through the whole thing. I told you the other day I made it to about Big Tuna and decided that was all I could take at that tender age. But I did come back to it about a year later, and it ended up being, once I watched the entire show, one of my favorite films, not just one of my favorite David Lynch films, but one of my favorite films, of all films. So that was it. And after that, I was kind of late to the game to Twin Peaks, but once I saw Wild at Heart, I kind of wanted to familiarize myself with all of his other work. And so that kind of led to me actually wanting to study film at the end of the day.
What's really interesting too is, if you are a Wild at Heart fan or Twin Peaks fan, they kind of go together, even though they're completely separate, because Wild at Heart was made, at the same time. David Lynch shot the pilot for Twin Peaks and then went to go make Wild at Heart. Mm-hmm. While they were waiting to see whether they're going to get the green light to go ahead and shoot the rest of season 1. So in that break, he shot Wild at Heart and then came back and was editing Wild at Heart while they were filming and editing season 1 of Twin Peaks.
It's amazing.
So that's why Wild at Heart has so many crossover elements. Sheryl Lee, Sherilyn Fenn, and a lot of the music, even though it's completely original to Wild at Heart, there's a few musical compositions that Badalamenti did that could have easily gone into Twin Peaks, like the cool catwalk that Marietta Fortune starts slinking around on the floor about. So there's a lot of crossover elements, even though it's a different thing. It's still kind of, for instance, even in Big Tuna, and we'll get to it, they mention One-Eye Jacks. So
right,
right. Yeah. So I discovered this movie. It came out at the right time, because while I had seen Elephant Man on cable when I was a little kid, and obviously some parts of Dune, even though I wasn't too into Dune, I remember that movie coming out and seeing parts of it. But I was about 13, 14-ish when a teacher, believe it or not, said, "Oh, you like film? Have you seen Blue Velvet?" Which is really funny to say to like a 8th grader. And I was like, I remember that trailer, because I remember there used to be like a channel that used to play like movie trailers, and so I remember seeing the trailer for Blue Velvet. But I always assumed it was a foreign film because it looked like something that came out of like the Czech Republic or something, the way Isabella Rossellini's hair was and things like that. Mm-hmm. He's like, no. It's like this, it's American film. Dennis Hopper's in it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So ended up getting it, seeing it, and I really liked it. But then Twin Peaks, it was right at the time that Twin Peaks was coming out. So it's like, if you liked Blue Velvet and you liked Kyle MacLachlan, it was like, boom, here's Twin Peaks, which is basically Blue Velvet Part 2, just on a grander scale. And then he won the Palme d'Or for Wild at Heart right at that same time. So it was like, it was the perfect year to get into David Lynch.
Nice.
And while I, love a lot of his other works, I think that was the golden moment of his career. He had so many things going on, winning the Palme d'Or, having the biggest show on television, and not being hated on for going to TV. Because I mean, now filmmakers and writers and actors go back and forth between film and TV. Back then, film directors, film artists never went to TV.
Right.
And he did, and showed everybody you can still, work within the censors, but still, be able to flourish. I mean, everyone says about season 3 of Twin Peaks, like, oh, it was great because with Showtime, you didn't have to worry about the censors and that type of thing. But sometimes I think artists need those coloring book lines to work within, because he had to work with the ABC censors and pulled off Maddie Ferguson's death, which is probably the most horrific thing ever put on television.
I agree.
So, and while there's more violence in season 3 of Twin Peaks, I would argue there was nothing more effective than the Maddie Ferguson kill, which was, 10 o'clock at night on Saturday with censors on, right?
Absolutely.
So, but Wild at Heart is, for all practical purposes, especially within Lynch's canon, still an extreme film. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of violence, a lot of sexuality, and yet what's really great about Wild at Heart, and maybe this has to do with the fact that Barry Gifford's book, was a basis for this, but still Lynch brought so much of his own stuff to it. It still works as a comedy, even though it's so grotesque. There's so much humor and love in it. Not like, some of his later works, which is just all dark and dreary, Lost Highway, Inland Empire, that kind of thing. In Wild at Heart, there's so much life and love and happiness in it. Even though it's in this world of darkness, it's such an optimistic film. And I would argue that, Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet were also optimistic films. He was a very optimistic filmmaker for a couple decades.
Oh, wow.
And then, I don't know what happened. Something happened, but I mean, even Steven Spielberg grew up, right? So,
sure.
But Wild at Heart, it's a film came out, like I said, when I was like 14. It was wild because when you went to see it in the theater, at least where I was, it played at the Movie Palace, which I know they don't have movie palaces that much anymore, but this we still did at that point. So there were these giant red velvet drapes on the sides. The screen was so huge. So when the fire in the opening credits, right, it lit up the whole theater. So all the red curtains were looked like they were on fire.
Wow. And
they had the sound. Here's the thing about Wild at Heart: you have to have the sound cranked up. Don't go to a retrospective screening, and if they have that sound down, just leave, because it's just not worth it. The whole point of this film is to go loud. So every time they would strike a match in this movie, I'm assuming most of us have seen this movie before. Every time they struck a match, the whole theater shook. It was like 4D before there was 4D.
Wow.
And it was an incredible experience. Every time, Power Mad music came, it just shook the whole theater. And I was like, that's how to do it, And Lynch worked with a sound designer on this film named Randy Tom, who had previously worked on Apocalypse Now with the whole Sensoramic. So it makes sense. But Lynch, even though he's known for his sound work, never went this wild with sound before, because it's the full surround sound experience. And even Bob Ray Lemon's knife being pulled out and Lula yelling "Sailor" was so loud it just blasted your ears.
Wow.
So it was an incredible film. I've seen the film. I saw it 6 times in the theater when it played. First 3 times it played by itself. The last 3 times it played double feature with Pump Up the Volume, which was actually a better double feature than you would think it would be. But it was good. I have seen it in retrospective screenings, and the sound's always low. And I'm like, what are you doing? This thing has to be cranked up. It's the whole point. But I think it's it may be lesser known to a lot of Nicolas Cage fans, generic fans, but I think it is almost the defining role for him that changed him from Nicolas Cage, Peggy Sue Got Married, Cotton Club, kind of
Arizona.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love those movies, Valley Girl, I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But even Moonstruck, he was supposed to be a romantic lead. but there's a difference between playing a romantic lead and being the romantic lead. I don't think for 1 second watching Wild at Heart, I don't think you question him and Laura Dern as Sailor and Lula. You completely just believe that they are that.
They are them.
Right. And, and what a big step this was for Laura Dern, because up until this point, she was the girlfriend in Mask. Mm-hmm. She was Sandy in Blue Velvet. Mm-hmm. She'd done, was it Haunted Summer with Eric Stoltz about Mary Shelley. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, she was getting work. She was always getting work, mm-hmm. but I wouldn't say she was dismissed, but people liked her, mm-hmm. but she hadn't had that kind of breakout moment. Now, I'm not saying that Wild at Heart was her breakout moment. For us, yes, maybe. But it wasn't until 3 years later with Jurassic Park. That's I think, where the rest of society was like, oh, who is this Laura Dern? We're like, well, let me tell you about Laura Dern.
Right.
They hadn't quite discovered her just yet. But I'm sure we'll go through the film and talk about everybody. But it's funny because Wild at Heart is a Lynch film that even among Lynch fans is no longer really talked about. I mean, everyone's just all Twin Peaks season 3, and or Lost Highway or but Blue Velvet and Wild at Heart are just not even really. You don't see people memeing things about Wild at Heart like every day.
They should be.
Yeah. So I'm just kind of curious, why do you think it was very well liked at the time, but seems to have kind of disappeared? Like, you can't even find it on any like streaming service or anything. Like, it's just not available.
Well, I think you made a good point earlier about how this is a really exciting period of Lynch's creative life, where he had Twin Peaks, Wild at Heart, and just coming off of the success of Blue Velvet. And then his films did kind of shift after that, whether it's maturity, whether it's just, he got interested in a different kind of storytelling, whatever the reason. I think people my age, especially like the end of the 80s, early 90s, to see, Nick and Laura in those roles, they were pretty young. I mean, Laura Dern was, especially. I think her character's Lula's 20 in the film. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's an intense narrative for a 20-year-old, even, a fictional character. We were just coming off of, kind of the cheesiness of the 80s, and maybe just the place that we were in as, coming of age teenagers or whatever, kind of prepped us for that. I don't know that there's necessarily that same, vibe or interest going on with teenagers right now. I think if teenagers sat down to watch a David Lynch film for the first time and it was Wild at Heart, they may have had the same experience I did, where it's like, whoa, this is too much. Or like some of them is like, might just very well say, what is going on here? I don't understand this. What's all the fire? What are all these little inferred moments, or these, uncanny moments? I don't know that, viewers necessarily appreciate that at the same age, that we did. But I don't know.
Yeah, I find it interesting because when this movie came out, it got a couple Oscar nominations too. Right. I mean, Diane Ladd was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. Mm-hmm. But I think this movie is like one notch below Inland Empire in terms of people talking about it, and no one talks about Inland Empire. So
yeah,
it's funny. I remember showing this once to a group of film students, and they're like, Nicolas Cage, because he's kind of become a meme himself,
Sure.
And then when they saw the movie, they couldn't believe it. They're like, oh my, he was great in that movie. I'm like, yes, he was, because he used to like really put himself out there in a way that was great for the masses. I mean, I think regardless of whatever people think about Wild at Heart, you don't come away from it saying, well, Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern weren't great.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I remember this is one of those films that I would see and just take people back with me. Like, you know, I rarely would go alone. I would just be like, oh, you haven't seen this, you know, you got to come see this thing. And they were like, what is this thing? And they were all, you know, by the time the movie's 2 hours long, but it feels like a genuine, like, epic. Because you go through so many adventures. And, you know, we were talking about the other day that the film is like a roller coaster for the first hour, and then once they run out of money, run out of gas, the movie literally stops. You know, it doesn't become boring, but it just stops. Yeah. You can feel the desperation and the ugliness of what Big Tuna, Texas is.
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, before we just talk up the movie like forever, let's just start the movie and then we can babble about it. So, all right. So I'm gonna let's see. It's going to take a second probably to get going here. Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
Ready.
All right. Go for it.
Okay.
Now the MGM line that we get on the DVDs and Blu-rays is that's a new edition. That was not in the theater version. It began with the Samuel Goldwyn blue screen here. Okay. I've seen a lot of great opening credit sequences in my day, but I think this is one of the best, if not the best, opening credits. It might be a nostalgia thing because, like I said, it you know, with the you know, being in the theater in the front row with the drapes and everything on fires, but also it just was so, you don't even know it's on fire. It's literal, like, passion, you know, and like you know, this whole thing of an uncontrollable just make sure you keep the volume down so we don't get a copyright strike. But I mean, yeah, just the what I typically do is just put on the closed captioning and then I can just follow it along that way. But yeah, I just feel like this opening credits is so amazing. And what's funny is that a few seconds of these opening credits actually show up in the season 2 finale of Twin Peaks. When Wyndham Earle stabs Agent Cooper, it cuts to these opening credits. So,
all right, just give me a second.
Anyway, and we get a lot of the Lynch regulars in the credits. You know, like I said, Sherilyn Fenn shows up in this movie, as well as, you know, Cheryl Lee and Jack Nance, and you know.
Sorry, got it.
Have you been hearing what I've been saying?
I just walked off during the credits being shown when Earl gets stabbed.
Oh yeah,
watch for that.
Yeah, there's a. I remember sitting there at home going, "Oh my god, it's the Wild at Heart opening credits!"
Right. That's pretty cool.
I mean, it looks like these are just like jets of fire, just like, because you can kind of see it at the bottom of the screen, like fire being pumped into the air. But I would love to know, like, how big of a space this was that they were filming this, because you can literally see waves of fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
then it dissolves to this location, which is actually in Los Angeles. You may have seen it in Less Than Zero a few years earlier. But this is supposed to be Cape Fear, which I thought was really funny of a title. And of course, you know, a year later they came out with the remake of Cape Fear. But you know, this was, you know, now in the script, this isn't our introduction to Sailor and Lula, but this is kind of a bold way to start your film. Okay. Just having the hero and girl just coming down the stairs. And I don't know how this movie would be received today if the opening 5 minutes of your film is a white guy beating an African American to death. I'm not sure the Twitterverse would be too happy with that. Because I remember this movie when it came out, there was some, you know, racist claims about this movie because, you know, every African American in this film is, you know, into voodoo or or is the old guy outside rocking to the radio, stuff like that.
Right. The sheer violence of the fate of Bob Ray Lemon.
Yeah.
It's got to be bad enough, obviously, to get him remanded to PD, correctional facility, obviously. But I mean, you see every little bit of it, and it's jarring. But
it's also the power mad music with the sound effects. You can hear his brain like coming off the floor, and then to go from this moment to Nicolas Cage looking up at Diane Ladd, almost like a silent villain from the 1920s,
right? Hovering around,
and of course Nicolas Cage would do this again to much lesser effect in Con Air, when he would kill someone at the beginning of a movie and then end up going to prison. But it's kind of amazing that that the hero of this film begins killing this guy, and yet for whatever reason, maybe because we know that Bob Ray Lemon pulled a knife on them, our loyalty never sways from Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern. Like, there's never a moment where you're like, maybe Laura Dern's with the wrong guy. It's not even a question.
Right. I mean, you're rooting for them, obviously, and you kind of get those little moments where you just kind of question his judgment. I don't know. Maybe that we can talk about that once Bobby Peru comes on. But yeah, you're right. You want him to succeed. You're rooting for him the whole time.
Lynch had a thing going on at this point with, Jeffrey and Sandy and Blue Velvet, and I mean, he really believes in the innocence, or at least at this point, he believed in the innocence of characters trying to make their way through kind of a crazy world. So you never doubt his his sincerity, and. I mean, I got to tell you, I had friends back in the early 90s that said, has Laura Dern ever looked better than at the top of the stairs with her hair curled and then, and of course,
the hand up.
And her mom playing this character, her real mom playing this character. Right. It's basically this movie, for all practical purposes. Lynch took a book written by Barry Gifford, and he would later write with Barry Gifford on Hotel Room and Lost Highway, but he basically transformed this film into a remake of The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, that's about it.
And I mean, one thing that I really love about Lynch is his ability to get the actors to trust in his vision and go all in. You never feel like an actor is, should I go here? Should I not go here? It's like they buy into it 100%. There's no way you could. You could play Marietta Fortune on a much, less intense way, but it would not be Wild at Heart anymore. It would be sort of like a Lifetime drama. So,
right.
Everything in this film has to be heightened. The only person that I think isn't heightened is Harry Dean Stanton, and he pays the price for it.
Right. He's like the link to the normal world, but then
right. And then this whole again in the script, I think this is like 15 pages, 20 pages into the script where like she picks him up and they go to the motel. So I mean, he's just like slashing scenes left, right, and center. It's just to get the movie rolling. And again, this whole thing of Sailor likes his jacket and it's so bizarre, and yet at the same time you don't ever question like the reality of the situation. You go, no, there's people like this. Yeah.
You wonder how many of them, are like prototypes from actual people from Lynch's own life and experience, that he just probably tweaked up a little bit.
Right. And I think also, actors have met a lot of people too, so they kind of just create this thing here. Just giving Nicolas Cage just like action in the background to balance just like radio on his foot the whole time.
Right? Play the core a little bit.
Right. And then we get this flashback with Lula and Uncle Pooch.
Right.
And this actor went on to be in Lynch's On the Air and few other things. But he's a comedian, so to like cast him as this like rapist Uncle Pooch, you know, and I mean, every time we see Marietta, right, her hair is different, and like this whole other vibe going on, and I think Lynch took what he was doing with Marietta Fortune and took it a little further when he did season 3 of Twin Peaks and turned Grace Zabriskie basically into this, you know, even on an even more intense level. But we see more of Marietta than we do of Grace Zabriskie in season 3. But I think he's still kind of playing on this idea of like all consuming, like jealousy and hatred inside of you. But I mean, it's also a bold choice to have your lead actor snapping gum like through the film too, you know.
Sure.
Because that might not be pleasant for viewers. Even just on a sound recording, that's kind of wild. But again, you know, Lynch introduces the whole Wicked Witch laugh, and with the recurring image of the fire. It's interesting how fire. The whole motif of fire disappears once they hit Big Tuna. Like there's no more inserts. I think no, there's one more. There's one more of Sailor lighting his cigarette, but I mean, it's like halfway through the Big Tuna sequence, so kind of startles you a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that has to do with like the realization between Sailor and Lula? You know, she's connecting it to the death of her father. And he doesn't tell her that he did driving for Marcela Santos until they're in Big Tuna, right? Like it's in the hotel room, and she's upset about the way things are going. Right. But it seems like it's building towards something, you know, whether it's his memory of the fire the night Mr. Fortune was killed, or Lula's kind of scattered memories of, I don't know what, same thing, or just growing up in that house, being around those people, you know, what kind of stuff was going on with Mr. Reindeer? Like what got the dad into it in the first place? You know, why did he need to be taken out? Whatever. Right.
I also think it's probably an aesthetic thing too, because if you're going, okay, we're going to do this and that, once you hit Big Tuna, it's you can understand it from Lynch's point of view of like, well, we can't really jazz this place up. You know? We can't just have cutaways because, like, you know, Power Mad doesn't come back. You know, once Lula's pregnant, there's no more rocking and rolling and dancing on the side of the road.
Things have changed.
Things have changed. So it's an interesting thing. It's like to say once you know, I mean, I don't think Lynch is actively saying this, but I think in a way, subconsciously, it's saying once you're going to have a family, the dynamic changes.
Yeah. Power Man or any big fiery aesthetics anymore.
Right. And it's interesting because, you know, Blue Velvet, you know, Twin Peaks and Wild at Heart. I mean, Wild at Heart to a lesser extent, it has like these mysterious elements to it, right? Like you said, what was happening with Lula's dad and Sailor. But even though not everything is spelled out for you, you are kind of left with a feeling like there's not a lot of stones left to turn over. You can kind of assume things that, like, well, if Marietta is this wild, crazy lady, you know, then yeah, she is responsible for the death of the husband. And I mean, the scene that intrigues me now, looking at this film, is you have Santos, Marietta Fortune, and Perdita Durango, Isabella Rossellini's character, in the house at the same time. Because when he's pouring the gasoline, it shows Isabella Rossellini's leg.
Right.
Now, what was going on there?
Yeah.
That they were all there in the house.
Well,
it gives me Rosemary's Baby vibes or something.
Yeah, sick. You know, and then who's the other one? Isn't it Grace Zabriskie, the other blonde?
She's the sister.
Okay, right. So, I mean, has this always been some kind of just like secret little fun thing? We're going to go do our silver dollar thing, and whoever wants to come along with us to just, live it up, come on along. We're going out. But yeah, that's true. That's a good little mystery. Why was she there?
Now, I know Harry Dean Stanton has been in a lot of Lynch films since this. He had done The Cowboy and the Frenchman just before. It's kind of a short film that you can find. But Wild at Heart was his theatrical debut with David Lynch. And while I enjoy Harry Dean Stanton in all of Lynch's films, I think that his performance as Johnny Farragut is my favorite, because I think in the rest of the Lynch's films, like, he's casting Harry Dean Stanton because Harry Dean Stanton's like a good friend of his. Sure. And so it's like, oh, here's Harry Dean showing up. But I think in this film, he's actually given like a real character to play. Yeah. And you feel really bad for Johnny. You can just tell that he's being used.
Yeah.
And he knows he's being used. Mm-hmm. And yet he wants to believe in the goodness of people, and look where it ends him up.
Yeah. Doesn't go well.
No. And I think Lynch utilizes his eyes better in this film than all the other times he's worked with him, because he really plays off the puppy dog eyes.
That's true. Yeah. Especially kind of when he meets his end, you kind of just, when it's revealed to him who they are, whatever they're doing, And
he doesn't get angry or mad. He just feels sorry. He's like, oh, Marietta. I can't believe you went there.
Yeah.
We're coming up to probably my favorite transition in the whole film is
the bed
with Lula stomping on the cotton balls and then going to the club, because I think that's just an exciting camera move. They have the camera just going underneath Nicolas Cage's arm to the bed, mm-hmm. and then explode with the music. It's funny because like Nicolas Cage is doing this like sort of, I would say almost an Elvis impersonation, but he's not impersonating Elvis. It's like Christian Slater and Heathers. It's like, is he doing a Jack Nicholson impersonation, or is that just the way he talks?
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Because I keep hearing, oh, it's Elvis and Marilyn Monroe and all that. That might play aspects, but they're too fully realized characters to just be Elvis and Marilyn Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She's just, she's basically she's a child, she's 20 years old. He's, a few years older. I don't know. It just, but they're also kind of what they were going for with the Elvis, but no, I think you have a good point. I think that's just Taylor.
And if he's a little older, remember, this is supposed to be 1989, 1990. So, Elvis had just died probably when Nicolas Cage was a little kid, or I'm sorry, when Sailor was a little kid. So he probably has like memories of that and mm-hmm. that type of thing. Because I remember growing up, my sister would always be listening to the Beatles. And now that I think about it, it's like the Beatles had only broken up just like 7 years before when I was a little kid, So it's like they seemed like such old music back then, but it wasn't, Mm-hmm. So you have to remember, Wild at Heart, this movie is 30 years old this year.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, like a lot of Lynch's films, kind of timeless. I think it's his use of music. Like even when he goes for a known song, it's a song that has been around for a long time, so it could be really any decade.
Mm-hmm.
And
rockin' good news.
Yeah, and then he smacks her right on the butt.
Yep. That outfit, really.
But I love like just the set design. Look at the little candles on like the right side, like behind the lamp. One thing for sure is David Lynch loves his lamps. If you look at Laura Palmer's bedroom in Wild at Heart, I think she has like 6 or 7 lamps.
That's true.
And I don't know why she would need that many lamps. They're not even on, so they're not even like utilizing them for like film.
Wow.
Now, for those of you who don't remember the 80s, there was a hairband movement back then. Now, this scene, apparently, now this is what Lynch cut. originally, but I guess when they were filming this scene, it went a little far and beyond what we see here.
Okay.
To the point where Nicolas Cage stopped filming and said, "David, what kind of rating do you want to get this film?"
Oh.
So I guess they were dancing a little bit more wild than what we see here. But this also is like one of the great crazy transitions to go from mosh dancing in this club to basically singing Elvis.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where the band literally throws Sailor Ripley the microphone and says, "You have a lot of soul power the way E had."
Right.
Elvis.
Yeah, I see the comparison, really. And the whole time Laura Dern is just standing there doing these arm and hand gestures that have become so Laura Dern over the decades that, like, I think of her now, the age she is, and and just kind of her way, where she'll do these little gestures or reactions, and I do see a lot of like the stuff that she did as Lula even now. Like,
really?
when she went and got her Oscar, she went up there and she went up to the podium and she just kind of did this lean and she kind of just hugged the statue, and it was totally Lula. She didn't have her hand up and in her head or anything, but it just, I feel like those gestures are part of her as just an actor, and she keeps doing them.
So she's just not standing here like she's getting hot for Nicolas Cage the entire movie.
Well, I mean, she's doing that too, but I feel like it's kind of just an interesting way for her to be on the camera.
These extras are out of control though, with them just like all like hooing and hawing over. It's funny. Lynch has a. I'm going to be using the word wild, I think, a lot tonight, but he has this wild way with extras. I mean, if you go back to that scene in season 3 of Twin Peaks when the little kid got killed, those extras don't even look like they just watched what we just watched. It looks like he just found some people on the side of the street and said, "Look over there." But these extras here are way over the top. But I think obviously it works. It doesn't pull you out. I mean, but I would feel a little silly filming extras acting this like
Yeah.
If you see the DVD or Blu-ray, actually the Blu-ray, that we have like an hour of deleted scenes from Wild at Heart.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike Fire Walk with Me, none of these deleted scenes needed to be in the film. Like, it was so good that they cut them out. Lynch at this point, he really liked the 2-hour mark, and the way him and his editor, Dwayne Dunham, would edit the film. I mean, Blue Velvet is one of the tightest films you'll ever imagine to hit the 2-hour mark. Wild at Heart is, there's some extraneous stuff, but it's pretty tight. And, but yeah, it still feels like a 2.5-3 hour road epic because so much happens. I think it's also because there's so many sways between, heavy metal music to Elvis music to classical to, that you're kind of just swayed back and forth. So you feel like you've done more transitions than you maybe really have.
Definitely.
I mean, how does this movie play differently to you than, let's say, some of other Lynch's films? Like, what do you see? Because you can totally, we're going to do another commentary for The Straight Story,
mm-hmm.
which is another film that Lynch does, which is irregular for him to have done. However, you can totally tell that he made that. You can totally tell that he made this. Mm-hmm. And yet those two films are very different than the rest of his films. It makes me yearn for him to sometimes get out of the safe space and go into other territory, because he's good at it. He's mm-hmm. really good at it.
Mm-hmm. Well, to answer your question, I feel like as like an artist or an auteur director, there are always going to be those little moments in a Lynch film that we all kind of have grown to appreciate and love. The score, the music, like you had brought up before, Badalamenti, I feel like that's just kind of one of those constant kind of comforting pairings that you can, you rely on it, you like it, you enjoy it. But then going back to what you said about kind of the way the music kind of helps or kind of exhausts us through thinking that, we've gone through more transitions than have actually happened. That it's a really effective thing that he's doing where it's like you're disoriented, you kind of get comfortable in a scene, and then all of a sudden, whether it's the music or, an actual, transition into another environment. The music is, in this film, I feel like definitely more disorienting than any of his other films. And I feel it's really intentional. You're going along, you're in this place, and then bam, they're either, like in bed or, like you said with Bob Ray Lemon at the beginning of the opening sequence.
But it does feel like all of a piece. It doesn't feel like, well, he's just throwing these irregular music choices in there, because when you look back, it's like all the music choices would exist in this world. Definitely.
And I feel like that plays into the intensity of the film and like the narrative that we're, watching here. It makes sense for what's happening. Mm-hmm. I think earlier, maybe we touched on just kind of that uncanny element where I think it fits with what you're saying about the extras too. Like, are they really going that far with it? Okay, yep, they are. And I mean, that was one of my first kind of reactions when I was like a teenager watching this film. It's like, is this real? Like, is this really going on, And so I feel like you have those moments in all of the David Lynch films too. We'll get a really great one, a favorite one of mine later in the hotel when Marietta comes down and kind of encounters the elderly gentleman. I feel like that's really a nice spotlight of like this uncanny, just weird, incongruous set of events that he just likes to put on us. And I think they're really well done in this film. With some of the other films, you can kind of get lost as a viewer, like what is happening? What is the next move? Like where am I? What is going on? In this film, you pretty much have a constant sense of what's happening. You're not that confused.
Right.
Whereas the confusion element in a lot of his films, especially after this, can be kind of high. You're like, okay, is that her? Is that the other guy? Like, where are we in the timeline? Whatever. You have all these questions that may or may not get answered. This film is approachable. I mean, the narrative is pretty standard, but you still get those really, I think they're funny. Like you said earlier, there is some comedy in this film, whether or not, you see extreme violence or gruesome violence is comedy. The character of Bobby Peru is, I mean, at first I couldn't watch the film because of him, and now I find him hilarious. Just little bits like that where I feel like it is a tight film, and it's one that I feel like people, if they're going to start watching David Lynch, if they haven't yet, try this one, because if you can get through this and you can appreciate what all went into it, you're probably ready for more.
I would say this whole period, whether it be Blue Velvet, the pilot of Twin Peaks, or Wild at Heart, one of those three is a great entry point. And, you would know the person better than anybody to like know which one to show them. Mm-hmm. But I always love that we just passed the scene of them in the motel, and I love the scene when they're or that shot of them like laying on the bed and diagonally, and it's from above, because that is a disorienting shot. Because you go, where are they? How are they? Oh, okay, yeah, but it's so weird because it's not like an image you see of them, and it's like there's all this like hardcore sex happening in this film, and yet whenever Lula's laying in bed, the sheets are like comfortably pulled all the way up, and you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
it's quite amusing because you can't imagine Sailor and Lula would care about modesty after everything, and yet there's that point where you can see Lynch say, now Laura, let's pull the sheets up, and like taking care of her,
right?
Now, for those of you who may not know, because Lynch has definitely changed over the years, Lynch identified himself as a Republican at this point in time. I remember, like, even in like People Magazine Newsweek articles about Twin Peaks season 1, he would say, "Yeah, I'm a Reagan Republican," and stuff like that. That's something that he would never say today, and if you did say something like that, you'd be destroyed on Twitter.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was a different time back then. You know, you could
yeah.
You know, but I think almost he would say it. I mean, knowing Lynch, no, but at the same time, that there is a bit of a rebellious streak to be like, I make all this crazy stuff, and I'm a Republican.
How does that grab you? Yeah,
exactly. You know, but like you were saying about like this film being straightforward, that's not a negative thing.
No,
you know, because sometimes when you watch, let's say, Inland Empire, you're so disoriented, you almost ask yourself, do I even care? Why you know what I mean? Like why get invested? It doesn't seem like Lynch is even interested in himself. He's just having Laura Dern walk down the hallway for 45 minutes.
Right.
Whereas like this movie, Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, this period in his life. Now, again, I'm not discrediting the Elephant Man because that's a different thing, but it is obviously still him. I'm talking about once he decided to go this route, this sort of realism, surrealism, small town America type of vibe. While there are strange things happening in these three worlds, Lumberton or Twin Peaks or Wild at Heart, his affection for all the characters makes you care. Mm-hmm. Wild at Heart would almost be unwatchable if you didn't care about Sailor and Lula. Mm-hmm. Just to give you an example, now I'm not, because this is a great film in a different way, but you know, a couple years later, you know, this style of film was kind of redone as True Romance with Christian Slater and Patricia Arquette playing basically Elvis and Marilyn. Mm-hmm. Then a year later, Natural Born Killers with you know, Woody Harrelson, Juliette Lewis. So you can do the road movie with the you know, protagonist that's, you know, mm-hmm. maybe we should root for them, maybe we shouldn't. That doesn't happen here. You're completely, like we were talking about, we're completely on the side of Sailor and Lula. Mm-hmm. So there's never a question of like, well, do we have our loyalties with the wrong people? Because we see how evil everybody else is.
It's true. And I think you bring up an important point too about Lynch loving his characters. I mean, how much fun would it have been for David Lynch to just write these lines for Mr. Reindeer and Marcela Santos, or even for Marietta? You know, I mean, technically these people are all kind of on the side of evil. You know, they're trying to conspire to bring about the downfall of Sailor and Lula, but they're so fun to watch, you know, right, and right. If you can get your, you know, stomach right for Bobby Peru, it's fun to watch this just because they're so specific. They're so unique as characters that, like, as a writer, and a filmmaker too, like seeing this all come to life had to have been just like a trip. And they're just as much fun and they're just as, you know, important as the two that we're rooting for. But, you know, all this.
And they come and go through the story. Mm-hmm. So, you know, sometimes it's Johnny's film, sometimes it's Santos. But because they have the anchor in Marietta, right? Mm-hmm. She's connected to all of them. Mm-hmm. It's interesting because, like, someone like Mr. Reindeer, right? It's kind of funny because, you know, we had the log lady and the, you know, we all, you know, he likes that kind of thing. And yet it's like, he doesn't have to have the actors go over the top because the situation is over the top.
That's true. And they're written well, you know? I mean, here they're having a conversation about, she took my hairbrush, you know, just as he's making a call to, like, basically arrange a hit on someone, you know, like, this is just life in Mr. Reindeer's palace. He's making these calls and they're talking about their hairbrush.
But it's also, it's almost like the companion house to One-Eye Jacks and Blackie.
I just thought of that just now. Yeah.
You know, so
wow.
You know, you can kind of see him, you know, with that great cordless phone.
Yeah. Does he have like Pepto on the tray? Like, does he have stomach problems? We got to keep some Pepto on hand.
Probably. And the way he like introduces Grace Zabriskie and this shadow, and then he's got David Patrick Kelly, of course, you know, from Twin Peaks, Jerry Horn as one of her cohorts. You know, I think Lynch, you know, Lynch is always known for his imagery, but he kind of takes it to sort of like Southern Gothic levels at points in this film, especially when we hit New Orleans and all that. You know, he gets into the whole. I mean, I would love. Who wouldn't want to see the full extended Johnny Farragut voodoo scene that apparently was so graphic that 275 people walked out of the screening.
Oh boy,
that has never seen the light of day since that moment. But I can only imagine what was shown.
Yikes. I mean, I do think he does a really great job of kind of showing these places, these spaces as, evil places. And, just the slow motion fluttering of the streamers in New Orleans, or just that window in Big Tuna. Like, you don't need any more than just that image. And he's built up this kind of situation where you're suspicious anyway, but then those places become, scary. And
but they also go out of their way to show that New Orleans is not, can be a fun place. And like Sailor and Lula, they go and they, hang out with the guy that, talking about diseases and all that. And then they then they're talking in the bar and with the Julie Cruz song playing, even though it's not Julie Cruz singing.
Sure.
But so it's not like he's saying, okay, they're going to New Orleans. New Orleans is an evil place. It just shows that there's evil in these places.
Yeah, just within New Orleans with those streamers. Like, that's what I've always associated with kind of just like, be careful. Anytime there's that shot with the stream, it's just like they're. And
he shows it a couple of times too. They're like, do you get it? Do you get it? Okay.
Careful.
It's funny. Sailor and Lula have so many like laying in bed scenes in this movie. They must have been like, okay, here's another one.
Right. Well, they make them interesting, I mean, if that's a way to describe them.
Now, this scene here was much longer in the first edit, and his voice was not like this in the film.
Yeah.
When they decided to cut it down, they did some sound tweaks to it.
Oh boy!
The actor was surprised.
Can you imagine? Yeah.
Yeah. And this is Freddie Jones. He was in The Elephant Man. He's the guy that is running that part of the circus.
All right.
But I love the fact that like Sailor and Lula, like, they're not bewildered by things. They kind of enjoy the world they're into. Like, I think it's very David Lynch. Like the way Sailor is in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
I like when Sailor puts the cigarette to his mouth and then cuts to Johnny with the cigarette in his mouth. And then he says, they're going, baby, don't go to New Orleans. And then he says the big N-O, which is yes, no, do not go, Johnny Farragut, to New Orleans, right?
Yeah. Okay, my scene's coming up here.
Oh, okay.
It takes a while, but.
And I love all the pictures on the wall too. It's like it gives you that vibe of like, this is definitely a family that has like, all the family members on the wall and
right.
And the way Marietta is, I mean, this is kind of scary to think about it. This is sort of like the crazy queen in a castle, rebellious against Snow White and all that. But Lynch decides to just put it in a regular house down the street from you. You know what I mean? Like saying that like within every person's house is their castle and there could be a mad king or queen inside of it.
Right.
And again, this is what I think eventually became Grace Zabriskie in season 3 of Twin Peaks.
Oh boy. Yeah, here she goes.
So at first, is the implication that she's like creating something to slit her wrist?
Well, that looks like it at first. Like she's got the lipstick. She's kind of grinding it in. It's red. Maybe. But then I feel like he turns that on its ear when we get the nice little reveal.
No, I know, but I think is it the original version before it cuts, right? Are we supposed to assume that she's planning some sort of suicidal thing?
I don't know. Maybe.
But okay. So here's what I love. The dancers in the background.
Their capes.
I mean, he's got this huge. I mean, think about how big this location is. This set, all these actors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically a 2-person dialogue exchange.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a full orchestra in the back,
and then the fire play.
The fire play with the dancers in the background. This is a production designer's dream. and even Reindeer's like this. These are some strange people,
right? And it kind of punctuates it with that nice. Yeah, there it is. That little blow up at the end.
Oh yeah.
And we're back here.
Yeah. So I mean, here's the Julie Cruz song that was used in Industrial Symphony No. 1, and then he rolled it over here.
Okay.
Obviously had a different singer because he probably assumed the Julie Cruz is in the Roadhouse, so can't bring her to New Orleans.
She's busy.
Yeah. But this is kind of a strange, like, almost controversial scene in a way, because you have a scene where a boyfriend is telling his current girlfriend like his old like sexual history, and she's just like, "Tell me more."
Does that happen with people? I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know, but I think Lynch is like really just going, "Wow, these people are even more modern than we even think we are."
Right. Very modern. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got all these like assault weapons all over the bed too.
Oh my God.
It's very bizarre.
Yeah. Surprisingly, there are a lot of good kind of like creepy one-liners that you can get out of this film. Like, I mean, we in this house, we say stab it and steer all the time, just for no reason at all, just because it's funny.
Right.
Like take a bite of peach, just all these little things that, I mean, there weren't memes obviously back then, but
right.
They're just like memeable quotes,
Well, I would even say if you go to season 1 of Twin Peaks, that entire season is almost one big quotable thing. Mm-hmm. There's so many. I think was Lynch would later go on with Mulholland Drive and be like, "This is the girl," and that type of thing. But those are more like mantras that are said over and over again, as opposed to real quotable things. Like, especially like, when we get to Big Tuna and all that, like when they're all sitting around and Jack Nance is like, "My dog barks."
Yeah. I mean that, and then what was the other one? Oh, if you ever watch the show Homeland on Showtime, when Brody, the main protagonist, gets back into training, one of the questions he's asked is, "Who said this? He got me hotter than Georgia Asphalt." And he gets the answer, Lula Fortune, to Sailor Ripley in the film Wild at Heart. So.
Oh, really? They say that in Homeland.
In Homeland, I think it's like maybe the 3rd or 4th season.
Oh, wow.
But, fun little egg to come across.
Yeah. It's funny because for a few years after this movie, I guess Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern were petitioning Lynch to do a sequel.
Really?
And because there are other books, I think there's like 10 or 11 Sailor and Lula books.
Oh, wow.
And Lynch was like, "No, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen." I would have loved to have seen what he would have done. But this film feels so complete that I can't imagine a sequel to,
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what you would do. Even if you followed one of the books, what would you do with it? Because it's just, you feel like Lynch said everything he needed to say with this one film.
Yeah. And I feel like I wouldn't trust any other writer after seeing, this film as itself, and then seeing what somebody else would do with it, and then David Lynch having to kind of go with that. Like, I'd want him to write it.
Now, there was a spin-off called Perdita Durango, which follows Isabella Rossellini's character after this movie, but it was played by Rosie Perez. And and it's a film that most people have not even heard about, but there is a spinoff. And then also Lynch would shoot a scene with Nicolas Cage and Laura Dern for the Industrial Symphony #1 as sort of the alternative sort of ending that never was. I don't think it was shot for Wild at Heart, but they definitely stayed in character for that scene. That's for sure.
Oh boy.
Oh, here we come. The infamous Cousin Del scene.
Oh my goodness.
In a film that has a lot of moments that come and go, Cousin Del is quite something.
I agree.
It's only a few minutes long, has really no bearing on the story. And yet maybe it does. I mean, you know, because it does seem like Sailor and Lula kind of learn something from this. I'm not quite sure what.
Right. And the transition from this to then what we see in Marietta's bathroom is, again, one of my favorite moments in the film. Yeah, what is this? I mean, it's definitely one of those moments of like uncanny, and like you said, like, what is this?
I think what it is it's a moment in Barry Gifford's book, and Lynch was like, "That's cool. I can do this." And
bowling pins. I mean,
yeah, and just the fact that I guess Lynch told him that told Crispin Glover that it would be very, very bad if he let that glove go.
Whoa,
that was his direction to it.
And the sandwiches.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what are you doing?
And now I remember in the theaters, so many people were on edge because you just feel like Cousin Del's going to turn around and like kill her.
Right. No, I've got this. Making my lunch. I mean, isn't it obvious? Yeah. And how it's
a very creepy character, and yet, like Wild at Heart, like the rest of the film, it's presented as humor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because if you really think about living with someone like this, and there are people who do, this is a sad reality, and yet, from Sailor and Lula's perspective, you know, from our perspective, it's humorous. They seem more kind of disturbed.
Sailor, for sure. Yeah, like we're just telling family stories, and he's almost like, "Whoa, okay, we don't need to go that deep."
And then they have that shot of Crispin Glover with supposedly the cockroaches on him, but he's dressed like George McFly in Back to the Future, which is, I'm sure that was a Crispin Glover choice, and Lynch approved it.
Wow. Yeah.
And then, again, like Twin Peaks season 3, you have a character watching like nature documentaries, and but instead of getting disturbed by him, he's like barking at the TV screen.
Right. You know, just having my nightcap watching dogs. And
I love the fact that Lynch went so far to put the makeup also on the phone.
Right. Yeah.
Because it would make sense. You couldn't like handle all that stuff and not be covered in it.
It's smeared everywhere. It's in her hair. It's on her hands.
Now, how come no Lynch fan goes as this character to for a Halloween Lynch party? Everyone always does Audrey, and you know, like this would be the look.
You know something? Halloween of '99, a friend of mine did Carrie. Mm-hmm. And she used corn syrup and food color. So I could totally do this. My hair's long enough. I could be Marietta in lipstick. You gave me a great
You have to get the outfit with the black shoes.
Right. Absolutely.
But the best part, would you do it this way, or would you have the little chunks of vomit on the side of your mouth?
Well, because she did throw up. Yeah, I guess it depends on if I was going to like a Lynch centric, party, I would try to do it as legit as possible. If I was just going out and about, I might leave the vomit for another time. But
look at the fact that her teeth are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But when she makes these sounds like she's gonna vomit, it's like it's like, oh my.
Yeah, I imagine they had to retire that little white negligee and nightgown after that, stained up with lipstick.
Oh, back in the day when they actually put mints on your pillow.
Right. Okay. Let's see the shoes.
But that wallpaper, the wallpaper in her bathroom is incredible. That's something that I think a lot of Lynch fans typically miss is the little details. Like you mentioned, the bowling pins in Cousin Del.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at those little bathroom rugs.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what Marietta would have in her bathroom.
There's a cover over the toilet too, over the seat, a little pink shaggy one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Nice bathroom. She's got, I mean, it was 89. That was what our bathroom would have looked like, except ours was like blue and green.
So this is another one of these moments that, again, played for humor, that there's nothing good on the radio. It's just all bad news. And then finally, they're going to turn it off and start dancing. And it works two different ways. One, it's showing you that the world is going out of control and crazy, and that they need to just turn it off and be where they are, be happy with what you have. At the same time, though, it's played entirely as laughs, as humor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, yeah.
It's like they end up, which the last straw, as it is, it's like, was dismayed that the attorney had sex with the corpse. And then at this, she's like, what? Like she's had it, of all these things. That's what gets her.
Right. And then, now we're going to throw in the alligators into the Ganges. And it's like, right. Oh.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, she just has that look of just disgust on her face the whole time.
Right. And then here they are. They're going toward Big Tuna.
Right.
Which,
Well, they don't know they're going to Big Tuna.
They don't, but like they're going to, if Lula has any delusions about the world itself, just pointed out by these radio programs, she's going to get over those pretty quickly once they get to Big Tuna. And she says it, she's upset, and they have the conversation. She finds out some additional information, all that. But this is kind of like, oh yeah, wild at heart. I get it. But then it's like they're wild and they're dancing. But then when she says it later, like this whole world is wild at heart and weird on top, it's kind of like a negative, So which is it? Is it both? Is it one of the other? I think that's kind of cool.
Sure. She also says it at a moment of uncertainty, at that point in the motel, because Sailor's getting ready to do something. She's not quite aware, but she knows it's not going to be good. Mm-hmm. But he's got to do something to get over the fact that they have only $40 and no gas.
Right. And the prospects with Bobby Peru, I think any breathing person would probably be suspicious,
Well, especially after what he does in the motel room.
Yeah, because that happens, and then they have the conversation.
Right, but she doesn't tell Sailor about that. There is that moment, and we'll get to where the fact that Lula cannot tell Sailor that she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
But then Bobby lets it slip that Lula told him that she was pregnant. That's what makes Sailor suspicious. Lula told you, because like she couldn't even tell me.
Right.
Right. So I think that's what. So I mean, it's almost, even though Sailor is sort of portrayed as someone who may not see what's coming at him, he's not stupid either. I think he was just going, okay, well, gonna make the best of this horrible situation and try to get out of here.
Mm-hmm. And then like, how does he not kind of then get to like, okay, Lula told you? He says, no, I just took a guess. But then like, what was the situation that you were talking to her anyway? Like, right. He was right. Yeah, I shouldn't be involved with you in this. It's just creepy.
So I'd be curious to know how they shot this movie. You know, did they bring Harry Dean Stanton like, you know, every few weeks he came in for a day, or did they shoot all the Johnny Farragut scenes in like 1 week? Because Marietta changes her look and her wigs like every time they're in a scene together. So I'd just be curious, like how would you schedule a road movie? You know,
right?
Because I mean, they don't look like they shot these scenes just back to back to back to back to back. You know, but they may. I mean, they're great actors, so maybe they did. But I would just be curious to know how would you schedule this?
Right. Yikes. I mean,
he's so in love with her. It just makes you so sad.
Yeah. And then you've got this, you know, human wipe from one side of the frame to the next.
Yeah. I don't know. Some people I've watched this film with, they go like, "What on earth is that?" Mm-hmm. And what's funny is I never questioned it. Like whenever I would watch it by myself, it just seemed like you were watching a show on a stage, and this is, you know, the lady dancing on the stage.
Right.
Now, this was a very cool moment back in 1990, but of course now people go, "What on earth?" The fact that Chris Isaak's song "Wicked Game" comes on, which people don't know was actually created for this film.
Nice.
And David Lynch directed the first music video, and that music video got no play. So Chris Isaak went out with a model on a beach and shot a new video of it. Yeah. But you know, Chris Isaak would do Silence of the Lambs a year later as an FBI agent, and then of course he would be cast again as an FBI agent in Fire Walk with Me. So there was definitely a Chris Isaak, David Lynch thing going on, and then since then, you know, he's been working with musicians all the time as actors. The entire Blue Rose FBI task force is made of musicians. Yeah. From Krista Bell, David Bowie, David Lynch, obviously, Miguel Ferrer, Kyle MacLachlan's a drummer and a keyboardist. If you watch The Doors, he played all the music. So, you know, it's an interesting thing. He loves musicians, and then he basically became a musician. You know,
that's cool.
But I love this scene. I love these two nighttime scenes. The one with the Chris Isaak song. They no vocals, just the instrumental. But then the next scene is with Sherilyn Fenn, which that's a pretty great scene. You know, I can almost understand why she was kind of ticked when she first saw what she was going to be doing in season 3 of Twin Peaks, because she was like, "You used to give me such really good stuff, and now I'm just like screaming at this little guy, you know, in an office for like 12 minutes straight." But I mean, that scene with her is great, and it shows you just how Lynch was at this point still interested in going into the detours, but still bringing it together, right? Like, for instance, like she's screaming about her lipstick, Sherilyn Fenn screaming about her lipstick. And then we go off on this tangent with her, and then all of a sudden she's just bleeding out of her mouth, and then she says, "Get my lipstick, it's in my purse." He like brings even though it's an isolated scene, it does have ramifications for the rest of the film, because, you know, they obviously don't want to end up like this. And I think it scares them. But also in that isolated scene, it's not just like a throwaway moment. It feels like a complete arc within one scene with an extra, you know, basically. And I think it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, here you've got this little reveal of that's, you know, the night my daddy died. And like you said, we'll get to Sherilyn Fenn in a minute. We're coming up on the hotel scene with the old gentleman, which I really, really love. Yeah. And then later, doesn't she, I mean, she brings it up, right? Where she kind of even crosses her fingers. I hope seeing that girl die didn't
jinx us. Because
then later in the film too, when she's got her little passenger, They go by the car accident. Quick, baby duck.
Right. And we're still unsure whether that's Cousin Dell on the side of the road or not.
Well, we need to take a good look at that.
Yeah. I don't think it's ever been really confirmed.
Wow.
Or denied.
Might happen.
I love this. I love the shot of Harry Dean Stanton walking down the end of the hallway because it's very shining.
Yeah.
You know something terrible is about to happen.
Yeah, it really is terrible. Johnny.
But again, you're not questioning like, oh, I wonder what happened to him. I wonder who did this. You know exactly what's going on. You know,
pretty clear. Yeah. I mean, even that little mint on the pillow, if you want to dig super deep, it's like, do you have a silver dollar coming your way, Johnny? Yep. And you know it.
It looks very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, I could be wrong, and I can't remember entirely, but I think... oh, yeah, another thing is, again, this is like an isolated moment, and yet they bring it up in Big Tuna, too, where they say someone's car went off the side of the road.
Robert Brenton, yeah.
Right.
And that guy has a lot to say about Robert Brenton. It's not very nice.
Right. So it's interesting that, again, it's a throwaway scene, but it is a pivotal moment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it does feel like just another detour in a movie full of detours. Right. And yet I don't feel like the detours in this film pull you out of the movie. I don't think you go, why is that there? It almost feels like they were carefully chosen detours. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So again, I think Lynch, the artist at this point, is, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, but Lynch, the artist today, would not probably make Wild at Heart this way. I think there would be a lot more tangents and a lot more roads to nowhere.
Right.
And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying it would. I don't think it would be like this. Mm-hmm. Because there were a lot of scenes in the book, and there's a few deleted scenes as well, that implicate that Sailor might have attraction to other women and might try to get Lula jealous and that type of thing. Good call cutting all that stuff out, because we don't need that in this film. Mm-mm. They need to be together, and that's it. Like, you know, if you start throwing in little jealousy bends in this film, our sympathies for Sailor and Lula go out the door. Mm-hmm. We would be only involved with Lula and would never want to see her with Sailor. Right.
And then in the process, it's almost that would validate Marietta, you know, like she's been right this whole time. They shouldn't be together.
But. And I understand if this was like Martin Scorsese directing this movie, you know, you would have shades of gray. This movie needs to be black and white. It needs to have that blue velvet, Jeffrey and Sandy on this side of the town, Frank on this other side of the town. Good way to put it. Because when you are young lovers, it is very much us against the world. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so you needed to capture that. But I love this moment with Sherilyn Fenn. Mm-hmm. And she was coming right off, you know, season 1 of Twin Peaks, or they're doing it at the same time. So she's still got the Audrey hair and all that. And that little thing she does with her face after she takes her last breath, and she kind of throws it, you know. It's very very creepy. Yeah. But see, I remember in the theater when Sailor touches the girl, I remember a lot of people going, "Oh no!" Like they thought his fingerprints were going to be on her, and then he would be arrested for like the murder of her. But obviously, I mean, it shows that, you know, it was a car accident, right? But you know, you're trained in the movies, like don't leave physical evidence you were there, right? You know, because I mean, theoretically, you could see that different tire tracks, you know, had pulled up and driven away,
and he has violated his parole.
And this is the first time where we light the cigarette without the match striking.
Oh, you're right.
So things have definitely changed. And then when he starts the car up and then Wicked Game kicks back in, it's like it's just a perfect transition.
Yeah, look at that.
And you can't do a road movie without, a big old convertible open top.
Yeah. Here we go.
Oh yeah, he's gone buffalo hunting.
Buffalo hunting.
Now, the guy in the guy she's talking to is he's the one that walks across the bank in the season 2 finale of Twin Peaks that takes forever, and she's in Audrey's handcuffed to the vault.
Yep.
So again, it's things between Twin Peaks and Wild at Heart, that this whole period, Industrial Symphony again, used a lot of the music from Twin Peaks. It was all like intertwined.
Well, and the guy in the way distance, the guy who brings the milk.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But like I love how like everyone's like got a cane, a crutch. Yeah. It's almost like you can almost see like the actor goes, "Oh, my leg's in a brace. Okay, you can have the crutch. But if we're gonna do crutches, let's give the guy in the background a cane." You can almost see Lynch building it because this kind of stuff is not in the script.
This is how he sees it happening.
Well, I think that you get to the location, you see your actors, and then you start going, "Okay, what if we have them do this?" And I think he builds it.
Right. Yeah. We could really use like another old person in the background.
Right.
Who can we get?
That's why it would be so much fun to like be like a local casting person for David Lynch, because he just goes, "Get me somebody,"
Right.
But I mean, like me myself, working on a Lynch inspired project, I marvel at just again the set design, the props. I mean, just the couch that Marietta's sitting on, right? Mm-hmm. It's like it takes a lot of hours to find things this gaudy, but something that this hotel would have
for sure.
And I believe this is another LA location as well.
Okay.
I don't think they filmed too much, even though it's like a road movie. I don't think they filmed too much on the road.
Well.
It takes a lot of money to move a whole crew around the country.
Absolutely.
Now, see, okay, we look at Santos here, and obviously Robert Loggia in Lost Highway, and Jim Belushi in Twin Peaks. Lynch really has a thing for like these gangster type of guys, and it's very curious to me because I don't think David Lynch has probably ever hung out with a gangster in his life. Like, I don't know. He seems to like always put them in his films. Every time I see videos of him, he's like in his house making a table or something. Right. I don't know. Maybe he has to deal with a lot of these gangster types to get funding for his movies? I don't know.
He does.
But I mean, look at the background. The flowers like behind her. It looks like the painting on Laura's bedroom, and the inside of the Woodsman, the convenience store. And all that.
Floral, like embroidery.
Yes. And then we go from this again. Lynch has this way of like knowing when to hold a shot long enough because we're going to start cutting faster. Now he knows the next scene, the voodoo scene, is going to get real chaotic. So he holds this shot for a long period of time.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable.
I love the sound design in this scene, though. It's so creepy, and that it's all in darkness, and look at Harry Dean Stanton just standing there while this is happening around him.
Yeah, I can do nothing but sit and watch.
Yeah, David Patrick Kelly behind him just cocking guns.
Right. It's just oh boy.
But it's so well acted. Like these, you totally believe, even though this is an insane moment, right? You don't ever question the reality of this moment. No. You know that there are nuts people out there.
Well, and these people, like, obviously they've done this before and they're good at it, and this is what's happening,
And they're like, I mean, you almost think they're in some sort of like bomb shelter or cave or something. Like this is like their own private little torture chamber.
Mm-hmm. Yikes.
And Santos is like, whatever you do, make it good.
Right. You know?
Yeah, this was, again, one of those scenes. There's so many scenes in this movie that are stunning, stunning sequences. Almost like Lynch is trying to outdo the Dean Stockwell scene in Blue Velvet, or the Frank Booth's introduction in Blue Velvet. It's like, let me do a 10-minute like set piece that for 10 minutes you will not be able to get up to use the bathroom.
Right. Yeah.
And also, this is Lynch at a time when his films did, they moved fast, they moved slow, they were deliberate. Yet you didn't feel like he was like trying your patience of like, how long can I stretch this moment? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like in later stuff, I'm not saying it's good or bad. He definitely is testing your patience. Mm-hmm. How long can you sit and watch Dougie create ladders?
That happens, definitely.
Right? Yeah. Things of that nature. He's testing your patience. Mm-hmm. At this point, he wasn't really testing your patience because he was trying to hit that 2-hour runtime, but he could stretch things out, but you never felt like things were stretched out just to annoy you.
They were often horrifying or, a little gross, but I think they all ended in good time, and you're right on to the next one now.
Right. And to go from that shot of the gunshot to the sign, Big Tuna, with the sign, and hearing the flapping of the sign
wobbling, that's very memorable. And the sign of the FU on the back of the fish, also very memorable.
But that's because he does a double shot of it. He comes back to it, so it's like, did you not see it?
Yeah. P.S.
But I love this town of Big Tuna, Texas. I should have looked this up before, but be curious to know where they filmed this, because this town does not specify that Wild at Heart's Big Tuna, Texas was filmed here,
right?
And it's known as a horrible place to be.
And then you get the nice little, here he is at the place,
Well, you get that because the music goes, boy.
You get that nice little brass scare.
I remember watching this with somebody who did not see that previous shot, and they were just like, good God, why is he playing this music right when he gets out of the car?
Oh, boy.
So what do you think of Isabella Rossellini in this movie?
Oh, man.
With the dagger earring and stuff.
Well, and I mean, I always kind of wanted to see the sisters together,
Sure.
Like, what do they do? What are they all, they look the same. Like, what's the whole shtick here? I liked her. And I think I told you, I saw Wild at Heart as my first David Lynch film. So I hadn't yet seen Blue Velvet. So I think that probably colors your experience of her as a character a little bit. One to the next, or which one you see first. But I think she's just kind of like aloof, and like
I like her a lot. But in recent years, I've heard people mention that she's a weak link in this movie, and I don't feel that way at all. I think that I think maybe people were expecting a little bit more from her because she kind of played the second lead in Blue Velvet, but but she's used to good effect here. I mean, the fake blonde hair with the brown eyebrows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very specific. It's very aggressive.
But I love the fact that Sailor just looks already annoyed with her.
Yeah.
Like these two have a long history together.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's almost like he realized they had like close to $40 left, and it was just like, I'm just gonna make a left to Big Tuna, Texas, because basically what it is we think they're running out of money, and they are, but so they stop in this town. But it shows that Sailor had other purposes, and and of course we don't know at this point that she's also dating Bobby Peru. And again, it all comes together, right? You may be done with the past, but the past isn't done with you.
Right.
Of course, the the infamous vomit shot with the flies.
Yep, nice stain on the ceiling.
But see the little lamp. There's a little lamp on the dresser.
Oh yeah,
and
that horse.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They really make a big deal out of the horse, almost to the point where when Sailor comes in the door, she even talks to the horse, and
Sailor.
Yeah, it's interesting because it doesn't really, there's no really like bonding scene between her and the horse, and yet for some reason, it plays a pretty big factor in the Big Tuna motel scenes.
Yeah.
And again, what could be a throwaway gross moment of just vomit in a motel room comes back to the fact that she's pregnant.
Right.
So it's not just nasty to be nasty. It's got, but again, like look at that awful painting above the bed, the bed frame. This hotel maybe used to be good like 20 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and I find myself thinking, it's fine now that we know that it's her barf. Like Lula probably has sweet barf. This place, this Big Tuna hotel, may well have had previous barf that just didn't get cleaned up.
Well, see, that's what you first think, right?
Right.
But then it ties it back in. And maybe Lynch today would have just had it be random barf on the ground.
That's what happens here.
But like every time they're framed, we see the horse.
Yeah.
And again, the white horse in Twin Peaks, right, plays a big thing.
Yeah. Where have I seen the white horse? Like when I was in school, we did it's La Strada, the Fellini film, and a big deal is made of the white horse that she sees in the middle of wherever they are, just walking down the street. And they said the consensus of the class is that it signified her being lost.
Okay. Unlike Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, where he shows a white horse randomly at all times. So this is one of my favorite scenes, actually, is when they're all just sitting around.
Yeah.
Because the two guys, I think it's Pruitt Taylor Vincent and John Lurie, who of course did a great show in the 90s called Fishing with John, if you've ever seen that.
I did. Yeah.
But these two just sitting around, it's almost like they're in Big Tuna but they're just amused by the stupidity of everyone around them.
Right.
He's got the little Confederate hat on and and the Christmas lights in the background, great touch.
Yeah.
Rolling Jack Nance out for this moment.
Yeah. And I mean, he seems so, I don't know, he seems like such a creep here. And he's so sweet as Pete in Twin Peaks, where it's like,
right,
my dog barks some.
Yeah. But just the way, I remember when he barks at Lula, the whole theater jumped.
Right.
Because it was so loud. And then right when he does that, this guy like shows up on the side with like a magician thing and poof, lights a little.
Yep.
And then they roll out the porno actresses, and you're just like, what is this place?
Right. That's another thing. When he, specifies them's making a pornographic movie, Texas style. What is Texas style? I'd like to know more about that. Maybe not. I really don't. But what is that? Just because they're heavy, or what? It's in a trailer. Christmas lights. What is a Texas style pornographic movie?
I don't know, but it does paint a vivid picture in your head. Like him just saying that. Right. It's just, you don't almost need an explanation. It's just
right, and they know what it is, so you're fine. But
right. Now it's funny that you mentioned Fellini, because when these ladies come out, a lot of people accuse Lynch of going for Fellini moments in this part. Well, and it's like yeah, but it doesn't. But from the darkness comes Bobby Peru.
Perfect. What an entrance!
And it makes you wonder: is he coming out of his room, or did he come out of the porno?
He was. You never know. He seems, comfortable with the ladies, acquainted with them. Is that a bow tie?
So here's the thing: you have Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet, right? Obviously, iconic performance. Now, this character is in the book, but this depiction of the character is not what is in the book.
How could anybody? Yeah,
and he's coming out sort of in the Frank Booth sort of style of look, but he's not acting like Dennis Hopper on Blue Velvet, and yet you can totally see that it is Lynch going back into Frank Booth territory.
Right. Frank had better teeth.
Yes, but I like the fact that like they really, just in a throwaway shot, you can kind of see that he's got the Marine Corps tattoo, and then they bring it up. And this is also where they mentioned One-Eye Jacks, and
yeah,
is the Lynch world we're starting to bleed together at this point, whereas maybe later you would be like, oh, I don't like that. At the time in 1990, it was exciting.
Oh, for sure.
Because it felt like it was like before the Marvel universe. It was like,
yeah. I mean,
it was like, wow, we're having interconnecting worlds here.
Yeah.
That meant that, like, while Dale Cooper was solving Laura Palmer's murder, this was happening in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting is what happens in season 3 of Twin Peaks, but they go to Odessa, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So Lynch has definitely a fascination with the Lone Star State.
Yeah.
So obviously I know that Willem Dafoe creeped you out the first time you saw this movie. But what do you think of Willem Dafoe in this movie now, 30 years later? I mean, we've seen him in tons of movies, right?
Yeah. I think this is my favorite role of his.
What do you think makes him iconic in this role?
Oh my God. Just the smarmy, kind of one-liney way about him.
He thinks he's cooler than he is.
He does. And then it's just like those teeth, I mean, in some of the interviews that Lynch has done, or maybe the extras of this film, I guess getting him fitted for the teeth, getting Dafoe fitted for the teeth was a big deal that Lynch was very excited about.
Well, I think once you look like Bobby Peru, you kind of know how to act like Bobby Peru, right?
Absolutely. I can't imagine that it didn't just completely take him right into that role. And just how he's just kind of like, it seems like he's got this, I'm very entertained by all of this that's going on with Sailor and Lula, even when they're at the bank and he's like, those are dummies. Dummy, and then he's kind of loading his gun in this kind of like gleeful, like, this is,
well, he's a cat playing with his food,
right?
They think they're just meeting this guy Bobby Peru. He is well aware that they're target number one,
right?
So he's playing with them. I love this moment where they go to the door of their motel and they look and the cowboys are staring at them. It's so random, and yet you feel like there's something sinister going down.
Yeah. And it's fitting, I feel like, to that little hotel area or motel area where they've just been outside at this card table collection of characters who just hang out here. The Texas pornographic video has now kind of come and gone. Bobby Peru has come and gone. Like, this is this place, and it's kind of just horrifying, like, what's going to happen? I don't trust any of them,
And that's why Lula is just like, I know I'm pregnant. We got to get out of here.
Right.
And I think that's why, even though she's tremendously sad that Sailor's going to do something stupid with Bobby Peru, I think that she knows there's no other way to get out. You know? But I mean, again, like, going for humor, she writing that she's pregnant, and then Sailor lights up 2 cigarettes.
Right.
So it's like, it works on the level of like Sailor being stressed, and yet Lynch always had that humor right there. And I think Wild at Heart, while a lot of Lynch's things can be funny, Wild at Heart, even though there's serious dramatic moments, it overall, because the ending is so happy, right?
Yeah.
The film overall has a feeling of humor and happiness to it. There's dark things in it. If the movie had ended like the book ends, with Sailor just walking away from Lula, I think there would be an air of this isn't quite so funny.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what was it all for?
Right. But I mean, again, the ending, and we'll get to it, but still the ending of like, it ties it back in with Love Me Tender and all that. It's just, you know, you see that ending of Wild at Heart and you think to yourself, how was this not $100 million film for David Lynch? Because it just is, it's everything that a movie going audience wants to see.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And he got accused of trying to go the Hollywood route for giving the film a happy ending when the book didn't have a happy ending. And he said, I could not go to sleep at night knowing that I left Sailor and Lula in that turmoil. Which is funny because Lynch today wants nothing more than to leave you in turmoil. But back then he really did believe in the happy ending. Blue Velvet has a happy ending, Wild at Heart, you know, Elephant Man to a bittersweet degree, Eraserhead, Dune. It's interesting too, because later in his work, he would get into like, you know, is this a dream? Is this a nightmare? Who's Betty? Who's Diane? Who's the dreamer? We're all, you know, but at this point, Blue Velvet, Twin Peaks, Wild at Heart, dreams are dreams. You see Agent Cooper going to bed and having a dream and then waking up. You know, Blue Velvet, Jeffrey goes to bed, has a dream and wakes up. Mm-hmm. There was a clear definition of the world and the dreamscape. Wild at Heart, too, Lula's always talking about, like, I had a dream or a nightmare. That all went away as the 90s went on. He started blurring the lines between what is real, what is dreams, you know, all that type of thing. Whereas I kind of like the idea of the real world, and then your dreams is where your subconscious puts it all together. Mm-hmm. I thought that was a fascinating way. But now, especially like season 3, the whole thing could be a dang dream. Who knows? You know what I mean? But anyway, so this is the Isabella Rossellini, Dennis Hopper scene from Blue Velvet to taken to another level with the Wild at Heart. Bobby Peru scene. I remember in the theater, that long shot where you see him go in the bathroom and pee. I'm pretty sure Willem Dafoe actually pees in that shot, because there's no way that he could have just poured the cup perfectly at that point.
Yeah.
I can only imagine Lynch says, we're not going to shoot the scene until you're ready to pee.
Right. All right, let's get going.
We got one take. Another thing you see in this is, I mean, they put her in heels too, but my God, Laura Dern is tall. You know, and playing Bobby Peru off into the mirror. And I think what's going on, because you could be like, well, you know, Lula could kick his ass, you know, but I think she's having Uncle Pooch flashbacks. I think this is a girl who has been assaulted and abused before, so she's kind of used to being in this situation, or, you know, has experience with this situation.
But then of course he kind of just immediately puts it back on her, like, oh, don't jump away so slow, clearly you want me, you know. It just,
but what makes this scene, I think, twisted in a humorous way is that once she gives in, he goes, nah,
next time maybe.
Right. So I think that, like, I think people get scared when they first see this scene because they think it's going to be basically a rape scene. It's going to be awful. But because the scene ends so differently in the way than you think it's going to go, I think in a way it makes, I think it's a way for you to say you didn't like Willem Dafoe and Bobby Peru, but then now you find him funny. I think that if this scene went the way of Blue Velvet and was like a full-on rape scene, I don't think you could say that. Definitely
not. No. I mean, he's definitely dangerous. He's definitely...
Well, with that jacket, how can you not be?
I mean...
with the strings, like, everywhere.
Yeah. It's a fine line between, like, how you're being manipulated as a viewer. And yeah, I feel like some of the people I've watched this with since, you know, I've seen it so many times, you kind of have to doula them through it a little bit. And this is one of those moments where you're just like you said, it's got the potential to be the worst, the absolute worst. And it's bad, definitely.
But it's not as bad as it could have gone.
No. And it just, yeah. But yeah, he's a fascinating character to me.
I think having the shot of her mouth with his teeth.
Yeah.
Like, but it's almost like, how could you not get that shot? That's kind of the shot to get with Bobby Peru.
Yeah, study these.
But like, even when he's like saying, "I gotta go," he's like all like laughing about it. Like this was just a big old fun game for him.
Yeah, it's endlessly fascinating. Like all of this. And it probably is for him. So if it's like he's getting these silver dollars here and there for Mr. Reindeer, this has probably got to be the best one possible, right? Like the most interesting, at least, for him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, here he is stuck in Big Tuna. What else is he going to do?
You know what? I don't think that he is stuck in Big Tuna. I think that Isabella Rossellini is there, and Willem Dafoe has come to town. Because why on earth would he be at the motel?
I suppose you're right. Yeah. And he's kind of got like that celebrity status too once he saunters in. That's a fair point.
Well, because he probably comes to town a lot to see Isabella Rossellini, and he probably stays there at that motel.
Yeah, I'm here, gentlemen.
There's a sailor looking steadily out in the desert.
Right.
All right, so let's talk about Nicolas Cage, because I know he's kind of become a joke nowadays because he does like 50 movies a year to pay for all his stuff that he's got to pay for. Mm-hmm. What do you think makes Sailor Ripley like almost the defining Nicolas Cage performance? Because he didn't have this voice. I don't mean like the Elvis. I mean just the deepness of his voice prior to this movie.
Right.
He always sounded like, I mean, not Peggy Sue Got Married because that's like Gumby, but he just sounded like, I don't know, just like a regular guy.
Right.
His voice went deep. His voice went deeper, and this was the voice he carried all the way through Leaving Las Vegas, and
yeah. I mean, I think what you brought up earlier about trusting Lynch as a director, I think had to have carried him through and completely colored his view as a performer, as an artist and as a performer after that. Like he got to work with Lynch at a pretty young age.
Right.
Laura Dern as well, even more. And all the the troupe from Twin Peaks. I mean, it has to be, whether or not they knew it at the time, working with David Lynch is an absolute force in somebody's life. And I feel like
I think he gets spoiled.
Absolutely. And I mean, Nick Cage did decent work after this. I mean, I don't know how, was it 95 Leaving Las Vegas came around?
94.
Okay. 94. He did a lot. I thought he was amazing in that film. I mean, Con Air and Face Off, Well,
those are at least watchable.
Right. They are. Yeah. But I feel like I feel like Laura Dern probably had a similar experience. I think it changes you. I think working with someone who is so dedicated and just so.
But Laura Dern has managed to do something that I honestly didn't think was going to happen, which, she got into Jurassic Park, and that was a big thing. But then, like, through the 90s, it was just kind of like, I would say mid 90s through mid 2000s, it was like, oh yeah, Laura Dern. Oh yeah, Laura Dern. Mm-hmm. But in the last like 5-6 years, she has completely transformed herself. I mean, Big Little Lies, Star Wars, obviously, showed up in Twin Peaks season 3. She's completely changed her career. She had the show Enlightened on HBO. She's she's basically this huge sought after actress now, more so than she was when she was younger.
Sure.
So, the longevity of her career is something to be admired because, most actresses don't last longer than their early 30s, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, how much of like Nick Cage's work do you think, like you mentioned, how irresponsible was he, like financially? Like what did he even do? I mean,
when
like just.
Well, he started buying like all these houses and things and planes and whatever.
Okay. Well,
and so he started having to take whatever movie he could get to that was gonna, you know, pay. But back then he was much more choosier with his roles because obviously he was, you know, he was still trying to separate himself from the Coppola family.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, but I mean, having this film win the Palme d'Or definitely validates like your choices.
Sure.
And you know, 2 years later from this movie, Lynch would return to Cannes with Fire Walk with Me to a much different take. Got booed off the screen. You know, in fact, the opening credits to Wild at Heart, sometimes I think that he should have saved those for the Fire Walk with Me opening credits because, you know, giant waves of fire would be quick.
Right.
But I mean, look at the background too with all the cars and trucks. I mean, these are all cars and trucks that would be in Big Tuna, Texas, and that's something that I know a lot of people, you know, love Lynch's pacing and style and this and that. But what I'm gravitating towards is his sense of place. Like you never doubt where they are. And that's something that I love because, you know, who knows where they filmed this, but it feels like Big Tuna, Texas.
Right.
And these like random cutaways to like, you know, the crystal ball with the Wicked Witch hands and stuff like that. It's
and like we'd only seen that before when he went into PD, right?
Right.
It's
right.
Like, yeah.
But I love the fact that they bring it up when he says that thing about, you know, maybe we'll get a little further down the yellow brick road.
Right. Right.
And there's just a sense of sadness.
Yeah.
There's a sense of almost inevitability that this isn't going to end well for them.
Exactly.
And yet the fact that the movie does end on a triumphant, upbeat moment is perhaps the wildest thing this movie could have done.
Mm-hmm. Okay, in that horn light that is linked up against the bed?
Yes.
Okay, I don't think I've ever seen that before, and all the times I've seen this movie.
You know what? I will agree with you.
What the hell is that? It's fluorescent, it's pulsing, and it's
I don't know, but like, but outside the window, it looks like there's just fire. Like there's like a, looks like a giant flames outside the window.
Right. That is just bizarre.
But the way he like throws his boots and like she like does this little jump, and I'm gonna say it right now that this has to be Nicolas Cage's choice of underwear.
Oh, absolutely.
This is not a David Lynch. This is Sailor Ripley's underwear. You know, Nicolas Cage is like, this is what I'm gonna do.
I'm wearing those. Yeah. I'm gonna get into bed next to the pulsing Longhorn thing, and
which honestly I don't think I've ever seen before either.
Yeah, I know I have.
Did they add this in for the DVD?
I don't know. It's bizarre though.
All right, so here we go. Here's the last match strike.
Okay.
And it's interesting that it comes here right when Sailor's made the decision that he feels like Lula kind of betrayed him too by telling Bobby Peru.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So he's a little pissed.
Oh, here we go.
I mean, this could easily be solved if he asked her about it and she said, "Oh yeah," and then he came and tried to do this. But she knows if she tells Sailor Ripley that Bobby Peru tried to do that, he's going to get killed or kill him.
Yeah.
And then he's going to go to jail again.
Again, yeah.
But like she's like, Bobby Peru's a black angel sailor.
Definitely.
Not a devil, a black angel.
A black angel. No.
Which is interesting because Fire Walk with Me ends with an angel.
Right. Well, and she's not wrong. He's, you know.
But I love the fact when she just says, "I wish you'd see me love me tender. Why can't we go over the rainbow?" And he puts his hand over his face, and it's like he feels like a complete failure as a human being right now.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, you know you've done something wrong if you've ended up in this motel in Big Tuna, Texas.
Right.
Right? Your life did not go as expected.
Definitely not.
And that makes me kind of sad for the people who own this motel in Big Tuna, Texas, because I'm thinking, what kind of people, where did they get in life to own the hotel in Big Tuna, Texas? I mean, I'm surprised Lynch didn't go there. Like, show the owners, like them checking in to the like, I'm sure if these people just hang around the patio area, what on earth? Okay, so here's this moment where we see the picture of the sisters, and then it explodes, and we get the voodoo couple like making out again.
Right.
But see, showing Bobby Prue's hand, right, opening the door.
Right.
Yeah. It's like the whole gang
back together again. Yeah.
It's quite a little apartment. I'm noticing the like the little TV in the background, and like somebody's drawn like breasts on the window back there. Apparently.
God. I didn't even notice that before.
But I like how she has like a Jesus crucifix up on the wall too, like.
Right.
And see, like, even she's like, it's interesting because like if she and Sailor go back so far, she obviously has no problem whatsoever throwing him under the bus at this point.
Hey, no, of course,
And then we get the realization that he's got the silver dollar.
There it is.
He asked for $2 silver. Now we know where the other one is.
Right. Johnny and Sailor.
And then when Sailor goes, "What are you doing, man?" I love it because there's this part of him, and he's letting us know too, as viewers, he's aware of this completely stupid decision.
Right. She's my girl.
Now, is this this isn't Sailor and Lula's car, right?
I feel like wasn't theirs black? I think it's
yeah.
Then
it just looks similar.
Out for a ride after that when he was changing the oil on his, and I thought for a second, well, that's weird. Does Bobby just get to drive? And no, I think he's got a red convertible. Sailor's got a black convertible.
Oh, okay.
I did think that though. I wondered about that.
Yeah, just for a second, I was wondering. Like, maybe Sailor's like, I need to save money on gas. Can we take your car?
Right.
But I love it. I love bringing in this classical music again from the opening credits, and because you really feel like the weight of this situation. Obviously, here's Lula still looking at the horse.
Right.
But look, the lamp thing on the side of the bed is gone.
Right, exactly. What was that? Because it wasn't there in earlier scenes, because you could still see that other lamp table. And like,
I'm scared now. I'm worried. Like, was that always there, or is this some sort of weird new thing? Did Lynch pull a George Lucas and put some CGI lamp in there?
I mean, of all things to just put in.
I gotta say though, for a young 20-year-old that's pregnant in Big Tuna, Texas, she still like dresses like she's ready to go party on the town.
Standards, right?
Well, I think it's also Lula probably didn't pack for pregnancy on this trip.
Probably
not. Yeah, but I love this with the classical music and them just cruising down the road and them just like smiling, like knowing they're just taking Sailor to his death, and Sailor's just like, oh God, where am I going? Where are they taking me?
Yeah, they're the knowers. We're the knowers.
Right.
Lula and Sailor.
That's what.
And Sailor don't know.
That's what's called the Hitchcock bomb under the desk.
Under the desk, yeah.
So yeah, I love this whole scene with the robbery of the bank. This doesn't even look like a bank, by the way.
Right. I mean, really, the nylons.
But I also like the ferocity of this scene. I know it was. I know 1 second of it was obscured by smoke from the Cannes Film Festival, and Bobby Peru blows his head off. On the Blu-ray and the DVD, you can see the uncut version. Because like there was no smoke on the shot. You just literally just saw his head like fly off the screen. But I love the fact that when Isabella Rossellini is talking to the sheriff, which of course is one of the great suspense moments when the sheriff comes pulling up, right? It's like classic film noir. But when she throws the car into reverse and knocks the sheriff down, it's like yeah, this whole movie is just getting more intense and more like chaotic. It's interesting that he would come up and talk to her.
Right.
And it's like, well, don't people go to the bank? What's
right? I mean, yeah, unless she's a known criminal or something, and he's like, she's on his radar already.
I don't know. I don't think that these neighboring towns of Big Tuna see a lot of action. So maybe everybody is suspicious if they're in that part of town.
Probably good. Yeah.
Especially if she's got hair like that. And of course, we're coming up to Lynch's tribute to Yojimbo, the Akira Kurosawa moment with the dog with the hand in the smell.
Yes.
But again, graphic violence.
Yeah.
But played as a laugh.
Right.
It's not played as this is sick and gross. It's like, where's my hand? Where's my hand? And then the dog runs out with it.
There it is. Oh boy, here we are.
The no bullets with the nylons pressing his nose in. Willem Dafoe.
Mm-hmm.
This is again where you see the teeth just full on, and on the big screen, believe me, you saw it even more.
I can about imagine. Sometimes when my husband wants to play a little trick on me, he'll change my laptop screensaver to that frozen screenshot for a little treat. And let me tell you, when you're not expecting to open up your computer and be greeted by Bobby Peru,
yes,
it's quite jarring.
Yeah, this is good. This is a good moment. And I like the fact that like Sailor doesn't kill him. It's it's just this random sheriff guy that shows up.
Right. Okay, now I see what you mean about the smoke. Like if there was okay, yeah.
So nothing was cut out, but they put a veil of smoke over it so you couldn't see everything. Mm-hmm. It's much more graphic. I'm shocked though, with all the DVDs and Blu-rays restoring things, that Lynch has never asked them to just put the original shot back in.
Right.
But now I think that's been 30 years. He's kind of grown accustomed to that shot. So he's just like, it is what it is.
Yikes.
But even then, like they're like the bank tellers are kind of funny. Like they can sew those things back on. It's like,
be positive here.
Exactly. And a dog that we've never established, never seen before.
He just showed up.
And now the whole movie has come circular again with Sailor in jail. But here's something that I love about this movie. I don't know how long it's been. 40 minutes, maybe 45. It feels like it's been 2 hours since we've seen Marietta and Santos.
Yeah.
So we're with Lula in this moment. We're not thinking about Marietta and Santos anymore at this point. We've completely moved past them. And so when they show up in this courthouse, it's almost shocking in a way. It's like, oh my God, they're still around. It's like, of course they're still around.
Right.
But we've been so focused on Big Tuna and Bobby Peru that we've kind of forgotten about them.
Right.
Which is, I think that's a brilliant thing. And we've talked about it before, but it bears repeating. This movie, for the first hour, they're rocking and rolling and driving everywhere and going to clubs and having fun. And then they get to Big Tuna and they're stuck and they're in the bed or there's just nothing going on. And I love the fact that he was able to convey that with the editing of just feeling like you're stuck. And here's Lula outside the courthouse waiting to hear what's going to happen to Sailor, and her mom shows up and just like, let me take you home.
Right. This Lula and Santos is pretty legendary.
Oh, where she screams, because you know it. It's not like she's learned some new revelation about Santos.
Right.
I think that she's just creeped out by her mom's friends.
Well, right. I mean, she's learned that he did some Sailor drove for him. But yeah, it just this reaction is so visceral. You almost have to wonder if she's kind of put some stuff together, like.
And the way her mom's like praying, and
Yeah, no, ew, don't touch me.
And you almost think like you almost imagine Marietta's gonna say something like, "Come on, we come back. You'll finish college, and you'll just move on with your life."
Right.
This nasty sink next to Sailor. He's still smoking 2 cigarettes, by the way.
Right. We just keep that going.
And I love the fact that we move ahead, like it's so precise. I don't know where. I'm waiting for the number to come up here. What is it? Let's see.
Oh yeah, it's very specific.
Yes, 5 years, 10 months, 21 days later.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, look at her mom. Her mom is like, again, it's basically what Laura's mom becomes in season 3, right? But Lula hasn't aged a day.
Oh, great.
And I love when her mom just looks right at the camera and she goes, "Girl, what have I told you not to go?"
The response.
Yeah, and then when Lula just slams the phone down, it's like, boom.
Yeah.
That was another moment that shook the theater.
Oh, yeah.
And then when she looks at her mom's picture and throws the water on her, it's so great.
Mm-hmm.
With the little pictures of paste, like.
So sweet. Poor Marietta.
I know she's got the martini with the lemon, just always.
All right. Now we need to watch.
So she spares Pace from seeing.
Right. Huh.
It kind of looks like Crispin Glover, but then it also doesn't. But it kind of does.
I think, yeah. I mean, we may never know what happened to Jingle Dell.
I don't really care, but it's an interesting development if that is Dell, because that means that was her cousin that she drove past. Right. First time you saw this movie, you were seeing the ending. How did you think this movie was going to end?
Oh, I was worried. Like, once I made it to this part and what's going to happens. I mean, I was very. I
mean, it is like tender and bittersweet at this moment. It's not like you're thinking something horrible is about to happen.
Right.
I will say, though, that as much as I like this scene, and I'm not saying anything negative about it, it does kind of feel like Lynch is kind of making a regular movie at this point, and we're trying to figure out how we're going to get to the ending. Like it almost seems like he has to have this scene to get Sailor in the car.
Yeah.
And so, but this is a fairly like standard scene. Like I could see this scene being in several types of movies. The only thing that's different is the Badalamenti music underneath it. But it's a fairly standard scene. But I mean, it's done really well. But you can tell that Lynch is like going, okay, I got to get him to this part. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because we're going to have him get out of the car in a few minutes and then break up with her and then walk away. So it's like we get this kind of scene twice,
Right. But
the talking outside the car.
Any sort of, feeling that this might be turning into, or just taking too long, as your standard ending gets put to bed once the group, the gang, kind of comes and we get Shirley. Shirley. I always want to say Sherilyn Fenn. It just comes easier, but Shirley.
but again, the gang is another thing that's violent, but played for laughs.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right. It's because Sailor even like apologizes for using
it's a
gay slur and says you've taught me a lot about life, and they're just dumbfounded. I mean, you can almost see them just going, "What the hell?"
For sure.
But you really do feel like Sailor and Lula, even though they look like they haven't aged a day in 6 years, have matured.
Right. She's not wearing her bustier and tights anymore with a thong underneath. She's a mother now.
But you almost get the feeling like, that she's had no boyfriends in between, and so she's been waiting for Sailor for 6 years, and then he just dumps her on the side of the road, and that's how the book ends. And it's like, well, that's a bummer.
Yeah. Well, I was 16 when I first saw this, like the whole thing, and so every part of me was just like, oh no, that can't be, when he tells her, like, this is how it's got to be.
And you almost get a little nervous, like, are they really going to do this like anti-Hollywood ending just to be edgy?
Right. Instead, I mean, you two get, I just find the whole enlarged broken nose thing so funny and absurd at the same time, where it's like, get out of the car, get on top of the car, and dance with Nick Cage with his big broken nose.
Well, again, it's the spirit of the whole film. He doesn't just run up to Lula. He gets on top of the cars and runs across the cars.
Right.
With the classical music rolling, and but you almost, it's like Marietta gets one last shot. But she's not. It's not like she hired the gang to beat up the Sailor. But it's almost like her spirit is out there. But Lynch talks about Marietta saying that she's dying inside, and so that's why she's becoming more frail, and that type of thing. And I almost feel like I'll say it again, I feel like he gave Grace Zabriskie that same thing in season 3 of Twin Peaks. Like, you're dying inside. Like when she's stabbing at Laura's picture at the end of season 3, and just making those like animal noises and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, just the how cool Sailor is, and he turns around. I mean, it's just like he could not think of the worst thing to say to these people. But it's almost like he sets himself up. I feel like in a way he knows he can defend himself a little bit, but I think he wants to get beaten up because he feels so shitty for what he did to Lula and his kid. He might be a little bit depressed and suicidal at this moment too.
Yeah, he's inside for enough years. Not thinking straight, or maybe thinks he really was doing it.
Or maybe he's just, recalling a moment of like people trying to fight him in the jail or something, But having Laura Palmer herself show up as Glenda the Good Witch, it's a good role. I mean, it's a small little role, but it's kind of perfect that David Lynch thinks of Laura Palmer as Glenda the Good Witch. And she even turns on the innocent Laura voice too. Which is a choice. I'm not, because Cheryl Lee's voice does not sound like that. But that long hair.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if well, actually no, MGM put this out, distributed it, and MGM owns the rights to the Wizard of Oz. So I was going to say, how did he get away with all this Wizard of Oz imagery? Because when they made the what was that James Franco Wizard of Oz movie, they could only do stuff from the book.
That's right.
They couldn't take things from the movie, but this actually takes images from the movie. So that explains that. But yes, the enlarged nose, the dazed look on Nicolas Cage's face.
Yeah.
And again, it's just what I love. The fact is Lynch is able through this entire movie to make it sincere and funny.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like one is cheating the other. You know, like they're complementary.
Right.
But I always found it very funny, the gang's kind of look as the camera cranes up. It's like, what on earth?
Really? And he left his suitcase.
Oh yeah. But then having Marietta just disappear from the picture.
Yeah.
It's kind of a great way of saying the mom is out of their life.
Right.
And we go back to the shot of her eyes with the tears.
Mm-hmm.
I think in one of these shots you can see the camera. Yeah, in the truck right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, him just running across the cars. It's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't just jump onto her car. He like stomps his foot, makes a big entrance. Lula.
Yeah. Lula.
And then when she goes sailor and it cuts back to him, he's got this big nose.
Right.
It's so great. It's funny because the first time you saw this movie was on VHS, I'm assuming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And VHS was not widescreen. So this movie was cropped by 50% the entire time. The only time it wasn't really was when he sings her Love Me Tender, and that's because they stretched it up.
Yeah.
Do you remember when Sailor and Lou were like all stretched?
I do remember that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about why.
Notice the telephone wires behind them.
Yeah.
It's been a Lynch thing for a while.
Yeah.
So this is like the big MGM 1950s Hollywood musical ending here.
Yeah.
I think it's the right move to go out on this film because it's not random. It is tied together even from the very beginning when she says, "Why didn't you sing me Love Me Tender?" And he says, "I'm only going to sing it to my wife."
Right.
So it ties in.
Yeah, it had to. Yeah.
And you'll even see that Leo Johnson himself, Eric DeRay, like did some of the props and so again, it was a big Twin Peaks. This is why, and I love so many of David Lynch's works, but to me, my favorites have always been the 86 and 92 period because there's so many interconnecting things and interconnecting people, and it all feels like it was feeding off each other.
Mm-hmm.
Different. I mean, Twin Peaks is very different than Wild at Heart, and yet it does kind of feel like we're in this creative bubble together, you know, at the same time. So
it's amazing.
So looking at this film 30 years later, has the film changed for you over time? Like, you know, now being a parent and stuff versus when you were 16, or is this, you know, Molly Ringwald talks about watching The Breakfast Club now with her kid is very different than when she was 16 and made the film.
Sure.
But I also think there's a thing about Lynch's work where it is timeless, you know, or maybe it takes you back to that age. Like for me, I don't know if I can rationally look at this from a perspective of being in my mid 40s looking at this. Because to me, when I see this film, I'm still 14 watching.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like it takes me back to that time.
I feel that way at certain points during the movie. And maybe those are just the points that made the biggest impression to me when I first saw it. The opening we've talked about with the music and the jarring nature and the very, very violent introduction into this is what this film is. Marietta and Johnny, like I always had like that kind of, oh God feeling, you know, like I had it right when I first saw it and then I saw it the second time. like, oh yeah, this again. And Bobby Peru, I feel like all of those things kind of take me back to just like this, am I going to be okay? Like, I didn't know anything about David Lynch. I didn't know anything about the film experience necessarily as a 15 or 16-year-old enough to be like, can I trust this guy? Whoever made this, whoever put this all together, can I trust this guy to get me through this? Mm-hmm. And he did wonderfully, brilliantly. But there's just, if you're in situations where you're not sure, you're wobbly about what direction it's going to go, like you don't know what end is up necessarily. I do get that, even just this time that we watched it now, just that remembering of, oh, now what? And can I get myself through this? The first time I couldn't, I had to be like, that's it. That's enough. I've had enough. And then but there was something about it, obviously, that drew me back to it, because I could have just been done with it and never come back again. But obviously there's something about Sailor and Lula that I needed it to be resolved. I didn't know how it was going to be resolved. And the way it ended up resolving was a way that I think is lovely. And I really am a fan of how it came together. I can't imagine the movie being any other way. Like you said, the book, I don't know if I'll ever want to read it if that's how it ends, but.
Well, it's very different from the movie.
Absolutely.
There's no Santos. There's no Mr. Reindeer. None of it. It's just basically Sailor and Lula on the road and, little adventures they get on, and then, things like that. So. Yeah.
Well, and I think that speaks to how you can trust David Lynch, in this film, especially, like we discussed, it's not necessarily always going to be so cut and dried or approachable, or, questions aren't going to necessarily get answered, but I feel like you can still trust him to tell a story. Mm.
No, I agree. And I think it's interesting that Wild at Heart, people are always quoting Twin Peaks all the time. I don't see anybody talking about Wild at Heart. I see more Eraserhead images than I do anything having to do with Wild at Heart.
We need to change that. We need to bring it back into the lexicon.
I agree. So, all right, Anna. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to talking the straight story and hopefully other things with you as well. And it's a real pleasure. So people can find you. I've had the thing up the entire time at television_lady at Twitter. And then obviously your blog at televisionlady.com. I know you're currently working through the Lost episodes. Anything else you are planning on writing about soon?
I do a Throwback Thursday piece for a media website. It's called Koala Media with a K, KOWALA Media. We do Throwback Thursday. Last week we did Shawshank Redemption. Tomorrow it is going to be Dr. Strangelove.
Oh, what a perfect time.
Right. Trying to stay relevant. I am doing the Lost episodes, doing a rewatch of Lost when I get time. I'm at kind of a halfway point in the first season. And I'm always reading. I've got a stack of books now that's kind of got a dystopian theme going on. But yeah, I put it all out there. And if you're interested, mostly television, but film and books too.
That's great. It's a great website, and I'm just so happy we touched base and all this, because this has been a lot of fun. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, so I'm happy to have you here and talk about all this. It's a lot to talk about, but I think this film is an important film for him. Obviously, winning the Palme d'Or is a big thing, but I think it's interesting because he doesn't usually adapt novels. And I think that one thing he learned from adapting Dune is he tried to adapt Dune as Dune. Mm-hmm. And when he took Wild at Heart on, he adapted it to being what he wanted it to be. He saw that there was enough room in this material to interject himself into it. So, he was able to take the character of Bobby Peru and turn him into Bobby Peru.
Oh, we're all so much the better for it, aren't we?
Yes, exactly. All right, everybody. Well, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Have a great day, and we will see you soon. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.